Picture this. You're standing in your backyard surrounded by plants that feed your family year after year. No replanting, no reseeding, no starting over each season. These aren't your typical vegetables. They're the forgotten warriors of the plant world. Crops our great-grandparents relied on, but modern convenience left behind. And today I'm revealing 9 incredible perennial crops that could change how you think about food security forever. Number 3 is so tough it thrives in conditions that kill most other plants. You don't want to miss it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we focus on real food security and true self-reliance. This is where forgotten knowledge meets practical skills, turning any property into a sustainable food paradise. Before we dive into the countdown, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss strategies that could transform your backyard into a self-sustaining harvest year after year. Now, let's dive straight into the list, starting with number 9. Coming in at number 9, we have sea kale, a coastal that most modern gardeners have never even heard of. But here's what makes this plant absolutely fascinating. Sea kale was once considered a delicacy in Victorian England, prized for its tender shoots and unique flavor profile. This isn't just some random weed we're talking about. This was a crop that wealthy families specifically cultivated because it delivered both nutrition and gourmet taste. What sets sea kale apart from almost every other crop you can grow? It thrives in conditions that would stress out most vegetables. Sandy soil, salt spray, harsh winds, poor drainage. Sea kale actually prefers these challenging conditions. Once you get it established, this plant can produce for decades, sending up fresh shoots every spring that taste like a cross between asparagus and broccoli. Planting sea kale requires a bit of patience, but the payoff is incredible. Start with root cuttings in late winter, planting them about 2 inches deep in well-draining soil. Give them full sun and space them roughly 3 feet apart, because these plants spread out as they mature. The key thing to remember is that sea kale is an investment in your future food security. Year 1, you're building the root system. Year 2, you might get a small harvest, but by year 3 and beyond, you'll have more tender shoots than you know what to do with. Caring for sea kale is surprisingly simple once you understand what it wants. Water it during dry spells in the first year, but after that, it's practically drought-resistant. In fact, the biggest mistake people make is overwatering established plants. These roots are designed to search deep for moisture, making them incredibly resilient during tough seasons. When harvest time arrives in early spring, you'll understand why the Victorians were so obsessed with this crop. Cut the young shoots when they're about 6 to 8 inches tall, before the leaves fully unfurl. The flavor is mild, slightly nutty, with just enough bitterness to make it interesting. Steam them, sauté them, or eat them raw in salads. Every part of the young plant is edible, and the more you harvest, the more the plant produces throughout the season. So here's my question for you. Would you dedicate a corner of your property to a crop that could feed your family for the next 20 years, even if it meant waiting a couple seasons to see full results? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I'm curious how many of you are ready to think long-term about food production. Moving on to number 8, we have ground cherries, also called husk cherries or physalis. Now, you might be thinking these sound familiar, and you're probably right. But here's what most people don't realize about ground cherries. While many folks grow them as annuals, they're actually perennial in the right conditions. And once you understand how to work with them, they become one of the most productive crops you can establish. Ground cherries are fascinating because they're practically bulletproof once they get going. These plants reseed themselves aggressively, creating new patches every year without any effort from you. But more importantly, in warmer climates or with proper protection, the original plants can survive winter and come back even stronger the following season. What makes ground cherries so perfect for self-sufficiency? They produce an incredible amount of fruit in a small space. A single established patch can yield pounds and pounds of these sweet, tangy fruits that store beautifully and can be used fresh, dried, or preserved. Plus, they're packed with vitamins and have natural compounds that support immune health. Establishing your ground cherry patch is straightforward. Plant them in full sun with decent drainage, spacing them about 2 feet apart. In colder climates, treat them as annuals, but let some fruits drop and decompose naturally. Those seeds will sprout the following spring, giving you new plants without any work. In zones 7 and warmer, mulch heavily around the base in late fall, and there's a good chance your original plants will survive winter. The care requirements are minimal, which is exactly what you want in a self-sufficiency crop. Water them during establishment, but once they're growing strong, they handle dry conditions remarkably well. They're rarely bothered by pests or diseases, and they actually seem to thrive with a bit of neglect. Harvesting ground cherries is one of the most satisfying garden activities you'll experience. The fruits fall to the ground when they're perfectly ripe, still protected by their papery husks. Just walk through your patch and collect them from the ground. Each fruit is like a little gift wrapped in nature's own packaging. Use them fresh in salads, make them into jams, or dry them for a sweet snack that keeps for months. Here's something interesting to think about. Would you rather spend time every spring planting and tending annual crops? Or would you prefer to establish perennial patches that keep producing with minimal input? Let me know in the comments what appeals to you more. At number 7, we have Egyptian walking onions, and this might be the most ingenious plant on our entire list. These onions don't just survive year after year, they literally plant themselves, creating new colonies without any human intervention. If you've never seen walking onions in action, you're about to understand why they're absolutely perfect for anyone serious about food self-sufficiency. Here's how the magic happens. Egyptian walking onions grow tall green shoots just like regular onions, but instead of flowers, they develop clusters of small bulbs at the top of the stems. As these top bulbs get heavier, the stems bend over and touch the ground. The bulbs then root themselves exactly where they land, creating brand new onion plants. Essentially, your onion patch walks across your property season after season, expanding your food production without you lifting a finger. Why are walking onions such a game changer for self-sufficient gardening? First, every part of the plant is edible at different times of the year. The green shoots can be harvested like scallions throughout the growing season. The underground bulbs can be dug up and used like regular onions. Even the top bulbs can be harvested and eaten or replanted to start new patches wherever you want them. Setting up your walking onion colony is incredibly simple. Plant the bulbs about 4 inches deep and 6 inches apart in well-draining soil. They prefer full sun but tolerate partial shade better than most onions. Once they're in the ground, your main job is to stay out of their way and let them do what they do best. Maintenance is practically non-existent. These onions are cold-hardy, drought-tolerant, and rarely bothered by the pests that plague other onion varieties. Your biggest challenge might actually be controlling their spread if you don't want them taking over your entire garden. The harvesting flexibility makes walking onions perfect for self-sufficiency. Snip green shoots whenever you need them for cooking. Dig underground bulbs in late summer when you want storage onions. Collect top bulbs to expand your patches or share with neighbors. It's like having a renewable onion resource that never runs out. So here's what I want to know. Does the idea of crops that plant themselves and expand your food production automatically sound too good to be true? Or does it sound like exactly what every self-sufficient homestead needs? Share your thoughts below because this is just the beginning of what these forgotten crops can do. At number 6, we have Turkish rocket. And if you've never heard of this leafy green powerhouse, you're about to discover why it should be growing in every self-sufficient garden. Turkish rocket isn't just another salad green that you plant once and harvest for a few weeks. This is a perennial that keeps producing fresh, peppery leaves for years, even in conditions that would make other greens bolt or wither away. What makes Turkish rocket so special for long-term food security? Unlike annual greens that give you one harvest before they're done, Turkish rocket produces multiple flushes of leaves throughout the growing season. Cut it back, and it regrows even stronger. It survives harsh winters, laughs at summer heat, and actually improves in flavor after frost touches the leaves. Plus, the flowers are completely edible and attract beneficial insects to your garden. The planting process couldn't be more straightforward. Sow seeds directly in the ground in early spring or fall, barely covering them with soil. Turkish rocket isn't picky about soil conditions, though it does appreciate decent drainage. Space your plants about 8 inches apart, or just scatter seeds and let them find their own spacing naturally. Within weeks, you'll have your first harvest of spicy, nutritious greens. Care requirements are minimal, which is exactly what you want when you're focused on self-sufficiency rather than high-maintenance gardening. Water during establishment, but once these plants are settled, They're remarkably drought tolerant. They actually prefer cooler weather and will slow down during the hottest summer months, but they never completely stop producing. Harvesting Turkish rocket is a continuous process throughout the growing season. Pick individual leaves as you need them, or cut entire plants back to about 2 inches above ground level. The more you harvest, the more tender new growth you'll get. The flavor is sharp and peppery, perfect for adding kick to salads, sandwiches, or cooked dishes. Even the seed pods are edible and add a crunchy texture to meals. Here's something to consider. How valuable would it be to have fresh, nutritious greens available year-round without replanting, reseeding, or babying tender annual crops? Drop a comment and let me know if you're starting to see the power of these forgotten perennials. Coming in at number 5, we have Good King Henry, and this might be the most underrated survival crop in existence. Good King Henry was a staple food in European gardens for centuries before it mysteriously fell out of favor. But here's what our ancestors knew that we've forgotten. This plant is essentially a perennial spinach that produces edible leaves, shoots, and flower buds from early spring until hard frost. Why did Good King Henry earn such a prominent place in traditional food systems? Because it delivers nutrition when you need it most. The young shoots emerge in early spring when fresh food is scarce, providing essential vitamins after a long winter. The leaves are packed with iron, vitamin C, and minerals that support health during challenging times. Plus, it grows in poor soil and tolerates neglect better than almost any other leafy green. Establishing Good King Henry requires patience, but the rewards last for decades. Start with seeds in early spring, sowing them directly where you want the plants to grow permanently. These plants develop deep taproots, so they don't transplant well once established. Give them full sun to partial shade and decent drainage. Space them about 18 inches apart because mature plants spread out considerably. The first year is all about root development, so resist the urge to harvest heavily. Let the plants put their energy into building strong underground systems. By year 2, you'll start getting good harvests, and by year 3, each plant will produce more food than you'd expect from something so low maintenance. Caring for Good King Henry is refreshingly simple. Water during dry spells in the establishment year, but mature plants are surprisingly drought resistant. They're rarely bothered by pests or diseases, and they actually seem to improve soil health wherever they're planted. Your main job is to keep weeds away from young plants and then step back and let them do their thing. Harvesting offers multiple options throughout the season. In early spring, cut the young shoots when they're 6 inches tall and steam them like asparagus. Throughout the growing season, pick outer leaves for cooking like spinach or eating raw in salads. The flower buds can be harvested and cooked like broccoli. It's like having 3 different vegetables from one incredibly reliable plant. Now here's a question for you. Would you be interested in a crop that gives you fresh food from early spring until frost, improves your soil, and requires almost no maintenance once it's established? Let me know in the comments because Good King Henry might just change how you think about reliable food production. At number 4, we have perennial leeks, and these aren't the same as the annual leeks you might be familiar with. Perennial leeks are smaller, more intense in flavor, and they multiply underground to create expanding colonies that can feed your family for generations. Once you establish a patch of perennial leeks, you'll have a renewable source of onion-flavored vegetables that never needs replanting. What sets perennial leeks apart from their annual cousins? They're incredibly hardy, surviving temperatures that would kill regular leeks. They divide naturally, so your original planting keeps expanding year after year. The flavor is more concentrated, meaning you need less to add serious taste to your cooking. Plus, they're available almost year-round, even pushing up through snow in many climates. Getting started with perennial leeks is straightforward once you find a source. Plant divisions or small plants in rich, well-draining soil in full sun to partial shade. Space them about 6 inches apart initially, but remember that they'll multiply and fill in the gaps over time. Fall planting works well in most climates, giving the roots time to establish before winter. Maintenance is minimal once your leek colony is established. Divide clumps every few years to prevent overcrowding and to start new patches elsewhere on your property. Water during extended dry periods, but these plants are surprisingly drought tolerant once their roots go deep. They benefit from a layer of compost each spring, but they're not heavy feeders. Harvesting perennial leeks is an ongoing process rather than a one-time event. Cut individual leaves as you need them for cooking, or dig entire clumps when you want the white portions for recipes. The great thing about perennial leeks is that you can harvest aggressively without harming the colony, since new growth constantly emerges from the underground divisions. So here's what I'm wondering. How important is it to you to have flavor-packed ingredients available right outside your door, regardless of the season or weather conditions? Share your thoughts, because perennial leeks might be exactly what your self-sufficient kitchen needs. Moving to number 3, we have stinging nettle, and yes, I know what you're thinking. But before you dismiss this as just another weed, understand that stinging nettle is one of the most nutritious and useful plants you can cultivate. Our ancestors considered nettle essential for both food and medicine, and once you learn to work with it safely, you'll understand why it deserves a place in every self-sufficiency garden. Here's why stinging nettle is absolutely revolutionary for self-sufficient food production. This plant is a nutritional powerhouse that contains more protein than most vegetables, along with iron, calcium, potassium, and vitamins A and C in concentrations that put expensive supplements to shame. Plus, nettle thrives in conditions where other crops struggle, making it perfect for marginal areas of your property that aren't suitable for traditional vegetables. The establishment process is surprisingly simple once you understand what nettle wants. You can start from seed, root divisions, or even transplant wild patches if you have them nearby. Nettle prefers rich, moist soil and partial shade, though it adapts to various conditions. Plant divisions about 2 feet apart in early spring, and within a season you'll have a thriving colony that expands naturally year after year. Caring for nettle is almost effortless, which makes it ideal for busy homesteaders focused on low-maintenance food production. Keep the soil consistently moist during the first year, but established patches rarely need supplemental watering. The main management task is controlling spread, since nettle can take over large areas if left unchecked. Some growers plant it in raised beds or use root barriers to contain growth. Harvesting nettle requires proper technique, but once you learn the method, it becomes second nature. Always wear gloves and long sleeves when collecting leaves. Cut the top 6 to 8 inches of young plants before they flower, when the leaves are most tender and nutritious. The stinging compounds break down completely when the leaves are dried, cooked, or even wilted, making them perfectly safe to eat. The culinary possibilities are endless once you get comfortable working with nettle. Steam the young leaves like spinach, add them to soups and stews, or dry them for nutrient-dense tea that rivals any commercial herbal blend. Nettle also makes excellent fertilizer when composted, giving you both food and soil improvement from the same crop. Here's something to consider. Would you grow a crop that provides more nutrition per square foot than almost any other plant, while also improving your soil and requiring virtually no maintenance? Let me know in the comments if nettle sounds like something you'd be brave enough to try. At number 2, we have Jerusalem artichokes, also known as sunchokes, and this might be the most productive perennial crop you can possibly grow. Once you plant Jerusalem artichokes, they'll produce pounds and pounds of edible tubers year after year, often yielding more food per square foot than potatoes, while requiring a fraction of the work. What makes Jerusalem artichokes so perfect for self-sufficiency? They're incredibly resilient, tolerating poor soil, drought conditions, and neglect that would kill most other crops. They grow tall stalks that can serve as natural windbreaks or privacy screens while producing food underground. Plus, they're native to North America, which means they're perfectly adapted to a wide range of growing conditions across the continent. Planting Jerusalem artichokes couldn't be easier. Simply plant whole tubers about 4 inches deep and 12 to 18 inches apart in spring after the last frost. They prefer full sun and well-draining soil, but aren't particularly fussy about soil quality. These plants can reach 8 to 10 feet tall, so give them space or plant them where their height won't shade other crops. The care requirements are minimal, making them ideal for set-and-forget food production. Water them during extended dry spells in the first year, but established plants are remarkably drought-tolerant. Your biggest challenge will likely be containing their spread, since they multiply aggressively underground and can take over large areas if not managed. Harvesting happens in late fall after the first frost kills the above-ground foliage. Dig up the tubers as you need them, or harvest the entire crop and store them in cool, humid conditions. The tubers have a crisp texture and sweet, nutty flavor that works well roasted, mashed, or even eaten raw in salads. Any tubers you leave in the ground will regrow next season, ensuring continuous production. So here's what I want to know. Would you plant a crop that could potentially provide hundreds of pounds of food annually with almost no ongoing effort? Drop your answer in the comments because Jerusalem artichokes might just revolutionize how you think about food storage and security. And finally, at number 1, we have the most remarkable forgotten perennial of all, tree collards. These aren't your typical collard greens that last one season and then bolt. Tree collards are perennial brassicas that can grow 8 to 12 feet tall and produce fresh, nutritious leaves year-round in the right climates. Imagine having a living salad tree that feeds your family for decades. What makes tree collards absolutely incredible for long-term food security? They're among the most cold-hardy perennial vegetables you can grow, surviving temperatures down to 15 degrees in many cases. They produce continuously rather than seasonally, giving you fresh greens even in winter. Plus, as they mature, a single plant can yield enough leaves to feed a family, making them incredibly space-efficient for urban homesteaders. The propagation process is unique because tree collards rarely produce viable seeds. Instead, they're grown from cuttings taken from existing plants. Take 6-inch cuttings from healthy stems, root them in water or moist soil, and plant them out once they develop strong root systems. Space them about 6 feet apart because these plants get large as they mature. Caring for tree collards requires understanding their growth pattern. They grow slowly the first year, focusing energy on root development. By year 2, they start producing significant harvests, and by year 3, they're fully productive. Water consistently during establishment, mulch heavily to protect roots, and provide support for older plants that might become top-heavy. Harvesting is an ongoing process throughout the year. Pick individual leaves as you need them, always taking from different parts of the plant to maintain its shape and health. The leaves are mild-flavored and incredibly versatile, working well in salads when young or cooked like traditional collards when larger. The continuous harvest means you always have fresh greens available regardless of season. Here's my final question. Would you dedicate space to a plant that could feed your family fresh greens for decades, even if it takes a couple years to reach full production? Drop your thoughts in the comments because tree collards are the definition of sustainable food security. The 9 perennial crops we covered today flip the script on traditional gardening. Instead of replanting and reseeding every year, you invest once and harvest for seasons to come. Rhubarb brings tart stalks each spring. Ground cherries spread with sweet fruit. Egyptian walking onions plant themselves. Turkish rocket offers spicy greens year-round. Good King Henry delivers steady nutrition. Perennial leeks multiply into flavorful colonies. Stinging nettle thrives with zero care. Jerusalem artichokes produce abundant tubers, and tree collards grow into living salad trees. Together they create a food system that only gets stronger over time. If this video inspired you, hit subscribe and ring the bell for more strategies to turn your property into a self-sufficient paradise.